There's a lot going on today. There's the situation in Ukraine, which I think is the biggest story in the world, still unfolding. And you have Iran that seems to have captured an Israeli spy, which I was interested in, if that had any connection to the stuff going on with Matt Gaetz, but we don't have a lot, don't have any enough information about the situation yet. But ultimately, what I think I'll discuss today is this MLB situation with the All-Star Game. Now, this is a topic that I've been avoiding because I don't really like to talk about just straight-up culture war stuff. I don't like to just get on here and complain about whatever thing is distracting people in the news, because I generally think that this culture war stuff is largely a distraction. It keeps people from talking about real issues, like the fact that the U.S. is not leaving Afghanistan anymore, or that we're on the brink of World War III in Donbass. But I think that there actually is something worth mentioning with this whole MLB situation, it's really the broader situation regarding this election law in Georgia, and the brazenness with which corporate America is now lashing out against any opposition to, what do you call it? I don't know what to call it other than just the Democratic establishment. They're not, the corporate America is by no means pro-left. They're not left-wing. But they're very much throwing their lot behind the Democratic establishment politically. They seem to have no interest in ever cooperating with Republicans again. They seem to think that by going all in on the woke stuff, that will get the left to off their backs forever. That they, I guess they're more scared of the left getting in power and then dismantling them and seizing the means of production. They must be really scared of socialism. Again, this is just my trying to read their minds. I'm trying to think like a corporation here and say, hey, what's the biggest threat? And the only thing that makes sense to me is that they see the left as the biggest issue, and so they want to make sure that they are not seen as a threat to the left. They want to be on their side and in their good graces so that they can continue operating. And so they've decided to switch sides, because traditionally the Republicans were seen as the more, pro-corporate America, pro-big business party, although, the Democrats were just as bribable as the Republicans. And the fact that the Republicans were so much in bed with corporate America for so long has actually hurt them electorally in a lot of places, because they give these special exemptions to these big corporations. These big CEOs come into states, they negotiate with the Republican governor to get a whole bunch of concessions to essentially have the Republicans pay them to move businesses into their state, and now they've gone and stabbed them in the back. This really just, I hope that it will wake up Republicans, Republican politicians mainly, which maybe there's not much hope for them, but because Republican voters probably don't support this stuff. Maybe it'll wake up the politicians so that they realize that trying to just give handouts to corporate America and to try and be their buddy is not going to work anymore. That the corporations hate you now, and that corporate America is a direct threat to your political success. They might not care about the culture. I don't think that your average Republican politician gives a damn that Coca-Cola is really woke. What they would care about is that Coca-Cola is trying to stop Republicans from being elected and is openly hostile to the Republican Party. And so maybe the united corporate assault on Georgia in the wake of their relatively mild election reform law being passed, maybe that will start to turn the politicians against woke capital. Now, I don't think it'll happen in one fell swoop. For example, in Georgia this week, the lower house in Georgia passed a bill stripping away Delta Airlines jet fuel tax break that they were given as a concession, I guess to try and get them to fly more flights into Georgia, they said, hey, we'll give you a tax break on your fuel just for you, Delta. All those small airlines, they're going to have to pay the tax. And so Delta, we're going to give you a big advantage if you come to our state. And the House decided to strip away their tax break because Delta is openly hostile to the state of Georgia now and to their government. So they said, no, we're not going to pay you. We're not going to give you a tax break then and help you outcompete give you an unfair advantage over the other airlines. But the Georgia Senate said, no, we're not going to take that bill up. So you can see there that this has not been a binary shift. It's not like, okay, all of a sudden the Republicans all realize at once that corporate America is their enemy. You still have, and it's fitting that the lower house would be the first to switch, because the lower house in any bicameral legislature is the one that's going to be more in tune to the people, relatively speaking. Their terms are typically shorter, and there's more of them, so they have smaller districts. They're always going to represent their people better, whereas the upper house is typically going to be that's your country club, as far as legislators go. And so the country club Republicans in the Georgia Senate declined to take up this bill, which means that they're still loyal to corporate power, even if that corporate power is being used against them. And so the reality that Republicans will have to contend with if they want to win in the future, and this is something that I hope that they realize, because it would be, I would consider it to be a good thing, is that they need to completely divorce themselves, or at least accept the fact that they have lost corporate America, and that is now corporate America is now firmly part of the Democratic coalition. And the Republicans will need to embrace the working class and entrepreneurs. That's all they can do, which, frankly, I'd be very happy if they do that, since those are the people who I have respect for in this country. I don't really respect corporate America. I don't respect the professional class. I don't respect, doctors and lawyers so much, at least not after the last year. I'm sure that there are good, individually speaking, there are good doctors and lawyers. There are good people in all professions. It's just, overall, in general, they do not share the same values that I do. I have much more in common with an entrepreneur, a small business owner, or with a ordinary working class American. It makes more sense that those people fit together. And so therefore, the Republicans, if they want to take advantage of that reality, the fact that they cannot compete, they'll never be able to win back over woke capital, because they're not woke. Part of wokeness is being against the Republicans. And so as long as capital is woke, no amount of corruption will be able to win over the corporations. And so the Republicans need to respond by leveling the playing field, taking away special corporate exemptions that subsidize corporate America colonizing red states, turning them blue by importing the professional class and displacing small business owners, putting them out of business, and raising real estate prices to the point to where the working class can no longer afford to live in their old neighborhoods and their old cities, and they have to move out and find new places to live, and then therefore they displace those people, and it just drives up real estate prices everywhere. Of course, there are many other forms in which this sort of subsidized population transfer disrupts the community. I mean, there's new schools that have to be built. You have, people flooding into your schools who, again, don't share the same values necessarily as the locals whose children are currently being educated there. And so this long-running practice of, Republican governors bribing corporations to move their people into their states, obviously that has backfired in places like Georgia and Arizona and many other places. And so maybe now that the corporations so clearly culturally aligned with the Democratic Party, and are within the left's tribe, or at least that's where corporate America is trying to pretend to be. That is the that's the bet they've made. Well, then you shouldn't let them still hold any sway in the right side tribe of America. But even if there's nothing immediate that comes on that front, I think that the average Republican voter, at the very least, is fed up with woke capital. I think that is a pretty broad, a few years ago, generally speaking, the instinct on the right would have been to defend corporate America because, many of them, many people, many average Republicans either are small business owners or work for small businesses, and so they generally think of business as a good thing. And so they transpose or they project their impression of the businesses that they associate with onto some of these larger companies when the left attacked them, because they took it personally. They took it as a personal attack. When you attack Walmart, maybe a small shopkeeper felt like, hey, you're attacking me too, because they might be attacking Walmart for similar practices that a small shopkeeper might engage in too, like having a minimum wage worker sweep the floor. But now, thanks to the overtures that corporate America has been making to the left over the past few years, they've drawn a much bolder line between them and the sorts of businesses that would typically be venerated by the average Republican voter. And so, they're not necessarily, even if they are pro-market and pro-business in general, they're going to be far more critical of giving these people special treatment, which, they shouldn't have gotten anyway. That's not exactly a fair market practice if Delta is getting to purchase their fuel at a discounted rate, essentially, because they don't have to pay a tax that other people do have to pay. All that is political corruption, plain and simple. Well-connected firms not having to, pay the same taxes. It's very transparent. And, this has happened in states across the country for a very long time. And so now, hopefully, this is something that will become unpopular amongst the base. Instead of becoming a political asset for a governor to say, hey, look, I was able to bring this big company here, that will become a political liability because they say, what, you gave special privileges to some company so that they would bring all of their left-wing voters here and then try and impose their left-wing values on our society? And so this is obviously a shift that will have to take time, and hopefully it will be able to reverse some of the decay in a lot of these red states that are being commercialized and colonized essentially by these large firms with their highly educated workforces. Maybe more and more corporations will decide to boycott these backward, racist, sexist, misogynistic, anti-gay, whatever states, and go back to places like New York and California and Illinois. And likewise, perhaps this will even start to hurt some of their businesses, because I think that if this keeps up, there will be an incentive for someone to just start some kind of a list that compiles, essentially what side of the culture war a given company is on, so that political tribalists can choose to support, companies that, don't go against their values. So, the leftists can say, okay, yes, we can buy our Coca-Cola because Coca-Cola, called Georgia racist. We can do that. And the Republicans can say, oh, we can get our, Pepsi's probably pretty woke too. Maybe RC Cola. But who knows? They can find their thing. And, and this might seem silly to buy your cola based not on how it tastes, but based on their political leanings. But I see this as a positive development because it will increase the political segregation in America, which ultimately is what needs to happen in this country, because there are irreconcilable differences between Americans, and there's no reason why everyone in America has to be the same and live under the same laws. The more Americans see each other as different peoples rather than one united people, the faster we will be able to achieve a reasonable solution to the current political crisis that has been unfolding over the past few years in America. And it doesn't have to be just two sides. Now, far from it. The only reason why, we think of it as two sides is because of our binary political system. If you break up that political system and reform it into something different, a more decentralized system, perhaps a radically decentralized system where there is no central authority, which I think is probably the most likely thing to happen. I don't think that the United States will be reformed. I think that it ultimately will collapse under its own weight, and you will see new systems built from its ashes. And so the MLB and corporate America turning its back on the state of Georgia, and of course, the President of the United States turning his back on the state of Georgia, is just, I think, the latest escalation in the continued unraveling of the United States. And again, I want to stress, this is a positive development because things have to get much worse before they can get better. I do not see any near-term reconciliation of differences. I don't think that the wokesters or that the left are going to want to just sit down and make nice with the people that they see as backwards hicks who should be essentially taken out to pasture, historically speaking. I think that's something that people have to realize eventually. Not everyone does, but eventually you figure this out, is that the people who disagree with your politics these days want you and your family dead. Now, they might not say that. They might not say they want you dead, but they wish that you did not exist. And that's not a healthy thing for a single society that shares one political regime. You see, people in France and Germany are quite different. But they don't want to see each other dead. However, if France and Germany shared one government, let's call it the Franco-German Union, if that government imposed uniform rules on both French and German societies, the French and the Germans might want to see each other dead. They might wish that the other did not exist, so that they could just live by their own rules and live their lives as they see fit, rather than live their lives as people who are totally different from them see fit. And so that's the kind of situation that we have here in the United States. It's actually much more akin to Yugoslavia, which is far worse than the idea of just unifying France and Germany. And so with that said, I will continue to monitor the decline